Terrorism charges are filed against the former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. His supporters warn they'll hold rallies if he's arrested. I'm ᴟ-Rahman, you're watching Al Jazeera live from my headquarters here in Doha. Also coming up, Russia blames Ukraine for the car bomb attack that killed the daughter of an ally of President Putin. Kyiv has denied responsibility. And Israel Odinga challenges the result of the presidential vote days after the Election Commission declared William Ruto the winner. Plus,
I'm Patty Culhane in Washington, D.C., where monkeypox vaccine clinics like this one are popping up across the country. But is it too little, too late?
Welcome to the program. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is facing terrorism charges after being accused of making threats against the police and judiciary at a political rally. Supporters have gathered outside his home in Islamabad, warning of mass protests if he's arrested. The Islamabad High Court has granted Khan protective bail till Thursday. Now, he lost a no-confidence vote in April, but in a struggling economy, his popularity has surged. His latest rallies have drawn tens of thousands of people. Kamal Haider is outside his home in the capital with more on the charges.
Imran Khan's party leaders and supporters have gathered outside his residence in Banigala, which is situated on a hilltop. Now, earlier there were reports that Imran Khan would be arrested. However, his lawyers then went into the Islamabad High Court, from where they were able to get a bail before arrest, and therefore giving some relief to the former Prime Minister. There was tension here, the supporters saying that they will not leave this place, nor will they allow anyone to arrest their leader, and the party had warned that they would then have a countrywide protest, bringing life to a virtual standstill, given the fact that Imran Khan's party enjoys support in two key provinces, also in Gilgit-Baltistan and also in Pakistani-administered Kashmir.
People of Pakistan have decided that they need a revolution in this country, and it will come. And the destination is not that far now.
It is the public reaction because no military, no agencies, no police, no paramilitary forces, no one can stand against the people of a country. We are the strength of our forces.
Now, it will be important to see whether Imran Khan will be arrested when he appears before the anti-terrorist court on the 25th, but this definitely gives him more time and also to be able to work out a reaction. Now, his party leaders have been coming from across the country to his residence, and of course they will be mulling over plans on how to move forward.
Zahid Ibrahim is an advocate at the Supreme Court of Pakistan and a former additional Attorney General. He doesn't believe the charges against Khan will stick.
I think the threats made by the former Prime Minister at a political rally, although charged and incendiary, they don't constitute terrorism, and the Supreme Court of Pakistan has earlier interpreted Pakistan's terrorist laws as saying that these cannot be interpreted for persecuting political speech. Former Prime Ministers Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif also went through a similar episode of being charged for terrorism or even treason, and after that it was basically good standing to get back into office. We've got to understand, until a few months ago, Imran Khan was being they were being criticized and taunted for being a selected prime minister, selected by the establishment. And now he is a renegade rebel leader who has galvanized the masses in his support. Pakistan simply cannot afford a political wrangling of this size, which will have a former prime minister charged for terrorism. Certainly his supporters won't take it down very well, and the courts will have to come together, and they've given him a protective bail, and I personally don't see any chances of even the government trying to arrest him. But also from their perspective, they had no opportunity to sit back and take the threats that the former Prime Minister had leveled.
Now, Russia has accused Ukrainian secret services of masterminding the suspected car bombing that killed the daughter of pro-Kremlin commentator Alexander Dugin. Daria Dugina's car exploded on Saturday near Moscow. Russia's intelligence agency says the person responsible for Dugina's death is a Ukrainian woman who left the country soon after the explosion. Ukraine has previously denied any involvement. Both Alexander Dugin and his daughter have been vocal supporters of Russia's war with Ukraine. Meanwhile, authorities in Kyiv have banned Independence Day celebrations this week due to a heightened threat of attacks by Russian forces. The city of Kharkiv has declared a curfew. The event on Wednesday marks the end of Soviet rule in 1991. Pavel Felgenhauer is an independent defense analyst. He says the investigation into Daria Dugina's death raises more questions than answers.
The culprits were announced, a Ukrainian woman about 43 years old, Natalia Volk, and she actually, her hit squad was also she was with her daughter, a 12-year-old Sofia, and that the Russian FSB security service say that they followed and targetedly eliminated this 29-year-old Dasha Dugina, which was actually unknown politically, unlike her father, and that this was actually what's important is also that they say that this was a targeted attack against the daughter, not against Alexander Dugin himself, which is rather strange, all of it. It's a kind of bizarre thing. The Russian-Ukrainian border was rather porous, and there's a lot of movement of people there, and there's a lot of millions of Ukrainians working and living in Russia. So basically getting in, yes, possible. But for a professional security service to send a hit squad, a daughter and mother hit squad, well, that's kind of novelty in kind of, like American SEALs or Israeli intelligence operators. And again, there's been an unknown group or some kind of new Republican army no one knows about taking responsibility. So, but of course, what's announced by the FSB has more traction because that's kind of already official stuff. And the culprits got miraculously also got over the Estonian border very swiftly, so they're out of reach. And that leaves a lot of question marks.
Now, the southern Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv has been heavily bombarded since Russia's invasion began in February. More than 6,000 residential buildings and 66 medical facilities are reported to have been destroyed. At least 300 educational sites have been damaged, as well as 131 cultural institutions. Many people don't have gas, electricity or water. Al Jazeera's Teresa Bow has more from Mykolaiv.
It's become a daily routine, waiting for drinking water in the city of Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine. Luda Klaus says the water in the taps is contaminated.
Bombs are destroying us. The water pump was attacked near Kherson, so we're without water now. There's dirty water in the taps. We can't use it to cook food, only to wash our feet and use it to flush.
6 months ago, Russian forces tried to capture Mykolaiv. The Ukrainian army managed to repel their attack and push them out of the city. But people like Alexandra Hukovyakina continue to struggle.
I won't go anywhere. This is our land. We will stay here. I thought that because of my age, I was going to have a nice life. But no, every day there's shelling.
But it's not just the water. Thousands have been forced to leave the area. Roman Bosharov's house was destroyed by 2 Russian rockets. His family have left the country, but he says he had to stay. All men of fighting age are banned to leave the country.
They had attacked before, but no one expected that this area would be targeted. It's not clear what they aim for. Could be the factory behind, but you see, they target people, residential areas.
And there's no guarantee Russia won't try to take the city once again.
Rockets continue to be fired
on this city, reducing homes, schools, and healthcare facilities. This used to be the traumatology area of this hospital, and as you can see, it was completely destroyed. Authorities say that around 10,000 buildings in the city have been damaged by the shelling.
The streets look empty, except for barricades made of tires that show how the city is ready to resist a Russian occupation. Authorities are struggling to restore electricity and gas supplies before winter.
The Russians will not pull back. They won't stop. However, as of today, we have everything in order to face them. We will meet them and fight them. We won't give up.
While the fighting goes on in the southern and eastern parts of the country, millions have managed to escape, but many others are reluctant to leave. It's their home, they say, and their need to remain here is greater than the constant dangers they face. Teresa Wo, Al Jazeera, Mykolaiv, Ukraine.
Kenyan presidential candidate Raila Odinga has filed a challenge with the Supreme Court against the results of this month's election. The former Prime Minister was narrowly defeated in the vote. He says the results are flawed and should be declared null and void. The Electoral Commission declared his rival William Ruto the winner with 50.5% of the vote. Odinga got 48.8%. But 4 of the 7 commissioners who oversaw the polls refused to endorse the results.
The presidential election results announced last week represent that continuing struggle, pitting the forces for democracy and good governance against the corruption cartels that are so determined that they will stop at nothing to take control of the government in this country.
Some of them are in the nature of complaints of commission of criminal offences and election offences by the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. There are forgery of election documents. There was interference with the integrity of the technology that was used in the elections. There was also falsification of results which were uploaded into the networks that were operated by the Electoral Commission. We are seeking several orders, and it will be upon the court to make that determination. If they order runoff, we are prepared, but we think there was no proper count, and if there's a proper count that is supervised by the court, the results, we are very sure it will emerge that Raila Amolo Odinga won the election. And to that extent, we have prayed that he be declared to be the president, duly elected president of the Republic of Kenya.
Well, still ahead here on Al Jazeera, devastating floods in Chad reduced thousands of homes to rubble, and more rain is on the way. And back to school for millions of children in the Philippines after one of the world's longest pandemic shutdowns. So stories after the break.
It's been days of rain for the northern Indian states of Uttar Pradesh. Hello, everyone. So these are the scenes coming out of their waterlogged roads. Flooding certainly a big problem. This all had to do with a monsoon depression. So here's where it's spinning on Tuesday as we look into Rajasthan and Gujarat, and it's eventually going to shift into Pakistan. We'll talk about that in a second, but more wet weather hot on its heels. Okay, off to Pakistan we go. This is the situation on Tuesday. Still raining in Upper Sindh province. Here comes the monsoon depression right now. We'll put this a day forward on Wednesday. It pours into Upper Sindh province, eastern Balochistan, and South Punjab on Wednesday. That will be the problem areas where we can expect to see some flash flooding. Southeast Asia, solid bands of rain from Ho Chi Minh City to Bangkok, but we got to get you to the Philippines. There's a tropical storm here, and it's heading right over the main island of Luzon. A lot of rain is going to be associated with this. Torrential rains, the flash flooding, and landslides seem likely. Then there's another tropical storm as well, but this one's keeping its distance from the main island, Japan's main island of Honshu. That's the situation on Tuesday. Let's put it ahead and see on Wednesday. Yep, it continues to stay away. It's likely going to whip up those winds just a bit and some big surf.
Talk to Al Jazeera. We ask, So the rebound you speak of is clearly coming at a high cost for airlines and the industry. What's going wrong?
We listen.
You were part of the armed struggle in the 1970s. Do you have any regrets?
No. We meet with global newsmakers and talk about the stories that matter on Al Jazeera. Undercover reporting. Exclusive stories, explosive results. Al Jazeera investigations.
You're watching Al Jazeera with me, Çoʟ-ᴊᴇᴇʀոսо. A reminder of our top stories. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is facing terrorism charges days after criticizing the police and judiciary. Supporters have gathered outside his Islamabad home. The court has granted Khan protective bail. Russia has accused Ukraine's secret services of carrying out the suspected car bombing that killed the daughter of a pro-Kremlin commentator. Russia's intelligence agency says the person responsible for Daria Dugina's death is a Ukrainian woman. Ukraine has previously denied any involvement. Kenyan presidential candidate Raila Odinga is challenging the results of this month's election at the Supreme Court. The former Prime Minister was narrowly beaten by William Ruto. The US and South Korea are carrying out their largest joint drills in years. Tens of thousands of troops are taking part in the week-long live-fire exercises, which involve aircraft, warships and tanks. South Korea's president has promised to strengthen deterrence against North Korea.
Wars today are quite different from those in the past. Enemies will certainly conduct cyber attacks on national information and communication infrastructure and attack key industrial bases such as ports, airports, and nuclear power plants. High-tech industrial facilities, including semiconductors, and major raw material supply chains to neutralize our ability to wage war. This exercise will be a starting point for the government to reorganize its emergency preparedness in line with the changing war patterns.
Well, from Seoul, Rob McBride has more on the scale of the exercise.
It involves literally hundreds of thousands of personnel, both military and also civilian. They run through to the 1st of September. There is a very large civil defense element to these exercises, with whole government departments preparing for emergencies and so on, alongside the military units of both South Korea and the United States. Now, the exercises happen in two phases. First of all, there is a simulated attack from the north. It is how the South Korea would survive an attack from the north. And then a second phase, which is basically a counteroffensive against the north from South Korea alongside US allies. Now, for the past few years, these exercises have not been held here on such a scale. In part, that's been because of the pandemic, but largely it has been because there has been a liberal administration here that's trying to be pursuing dialogue with North Korea, and this was thought to get in the way of that. But there is now a conservative administration here, President Yoon Suk-yeol telling cabinet members Monday that he wants to see security in South Korea returning to a state of being watertight, as he described it, that the only way you can guarantee preparedness and readiness is to hold the kind of exercises on the scale of a full-blown conflict. Hence these exercises being held involving literally thousands of units and personnel, both military and civilian.
Now, Palestinians have been able to fly out of Israel's Ramon airport for the first time, but the Palestinian Authority says it wasn't consulted. Now, it opposes the flight, saying the state needs its own airport. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza have to apply to Israel for permits if they want to travel internationally. Natasha Ganem has more from West Jerusalem.
This is not only the first international flight out of Ramon Airport, this is the first time since Ramon Airport opened in 2019 that Palestinians were able to travel from the airport. The airport authority tells us that 40 Palestinian passengers were on an Arkia Israeli Airlines flight bound for Cyprus at 11 o'clock this morning. We're told that they were not subjected to any additional security measures. They took a shuttle from the occupied West Bank and then drove about 4 hours to Ramon Airport, where they boarded that flight. Now, there have been plans that the Turkish-owned Pegasus Airlines would begin flying out of Ramon Airport and carry Palestinian passengers this month, but an airport official tells us that those plans have been canceled and they don't know why. Now, this plan is controversial, so controversial, in fact, that multiple officials deceived us and other Israeli media multiple times regarding when this inaugural flight would take place. An airport official told us today that was, quote, to protect the privacy of passengers. Now, as I mentioned, this is a 4-hour drive on average, depending on where you're coming, from the occupied West Bank to the airport. And the Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, has said they were never consulted about this travel option. They oppose it because, in the end, Palestinians need their own airport. Now, remember, Palestinians are living under occupation. That means their movement is restricted. They do not leave the occupied territories without getting permission from Israel. So this is it's an option, but it's not exactly an easy option.
Emergency crews in Iraq have recovered 2 more bodies from the rubble of a collapsed shrine. A landslide caused part of the shrine near Karbala to cave in on Saturday. At least 7 people have been killed. And at least 22 people have been killed in heavy rain and floods in Chad. More than 1,000 homes have been destroyed and health services disrupted. With more rain expected, many people fear the challenges ahead. Hiba Morgan has more from the capital in N'Djamena.
Larundan Geraldine is still trying to pick up belongings from the rubble of her damaged home. A mother of 5, she says heavy rains in Chad's capital in N'Djamena forced her and her family to seek shelter when their roof and walls collapsed.
I was in the market and it started raining heavily. Then I got a call from my neighbors that my house was destroyed. Luckily, my children were not home. I came back to find the situation like this.
At least 22 people have been killed by rains and floods and dozens of others injured since the start of the season, according to the United Nations. Across the country, over 1,000 homes have been destroyed. Many people here say they've not seen this much rain and destruction before. According to the UN Environmental Agency, Chad is one of the countries most affected by climate change, and those likely to suffer as a result are the vulnerable communities. The floods have left many with no access to clean water. This is one of the main hospitals in N'Djamena. Now it's surrounded by flood water.
Because of the floods, patients can't come to the hospital. There is no transport. We only receive severe cases that are brought here by ambulances. But many of those who are sick can't come.
Medical services have also been disrupted amid concerns of waterborne diseases.
We only have 2 departments working, the children's department and the surgery department. All the other departments have stopped working because of the water in the hospital.
The rains are expected to continue until October, and the fear is that until then, more homes will be destroyed, more lives lost. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, N'Djamena.
A new case of Ebola virus has been confirmed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. A 46-year-old woman died in the city of Beni from a virus linked to a previous outbreak in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. That outbreak was the largest in the country's history. It killed more than 2,000 people from 2018 to 2020. The US is reporting more than 14,000 confirmed monkeypox infections. That's an increase of 30% in a week. White House officials are trying to secure an additional 2 million doses of the vaccine. Patty Colleen explains how people are coping with the rise in cases.
So my name's Matt. I have monkeypox. This sucks and you don't want it.
All across social media, monkeypox patients are posting warnings. This is a painful, debilitating disease that you don't want to get.
I was in so much pain.
Right now, the vast majority of cases are in men who have sex with other men. It's rarely fatal, but activists in the gay community have mobilized.
I'm very confident that we can get ahead of it before the massive outbreak, given the community's fortitude and their resilience, and also learning from the mistakes of COVID.
And there is a vaccine. The CDC says it should be administered in 2 doses, 28 days apart, but there's not nearly enough of it.
Vaccination clinics like these are now popping up across the country, but critics say the Biden administration was very slow. At one point, leaving hundreds of thousands of doses of the vaccine that the U.S. already owns in Europe. So now officials are trying to stretch the vaccine. By administering it in a different way, they're hoping to get 5 doses out of 1 vial. But there could be a problem with that.
It's totally unclear that anything I've read on the science that the degree of protection is identical to what the original proposal is, or prescription, which is to give 2 full doses.
Bob Goldstraw says he was turned away from getting his second shot. He believes it's a problem of supply. The D.C. Health Department blames the Biden administration.
What we end up getting is 12,000 doses. Had we got 12,000 vials of vaccine, that would have been some 60,000 doses that we would have had.
The monkeypox virus has spread quickly in the United States. The first case was reported in May. The CDC says there are now more than 14,000 confirmed cases. The Biden administration says they are working to secure millions more vaccine doses, but health experts say that creates other issues.
We really need to be partnering with our global partners and colleagues around the world to make sure that vaccines aren't just made available to high-income countries like the U.S. and Europe, but also that, it's pretty alarming and disgusting that now there are still no vaccines made available on the continent of Africa.
The maker of the vaccine says it will take months to expand its production capabilities, but experts say the window to contain a broader outbreak could already be closing. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Millions of students in the Philippines are returning to school after one of the world's longest lockdowns of the pandemic. Children have been studying at home for more than 2 years. Barnaby Lowe has more from Manila.
At a weekend community class in a Manila suburb, these children are learning how to read. It's a skill that by global standards should have been mastered by the age of 10. But Kian Borsione, who is in the 4th grade, still struggles to read in his native Filipino. English is an even greater challenge.
Can you do it? Huh? Say, how are you? She? No.
And numbers are equally difficult.
4 plus 6.
These children have been attending class remotely since the COVID-19 pandemic began in 2020. Most restrictions were only lifted this year.
Mothers are busy with work or with chores at home. They may not have enough time to tutor their kids, which is a huge part of distance learning.
The result is a further setback in the quality of education, not only for the Philippines, but for most low and middle income countries.
The quality of learning among Filipino school kids was already poor in pre-pandemic times. In 2019, only around 30% could read simple text or understand a simple story by the age of 10. International aid agencies say that number has now dropped to less than 20%.
On Monday, schools opened for in-person classes for the first time in 2 years. COVID-19 is still very much a concern, with temperature checks, face masks, and regular hand washing the norm. But the Education Department acknowledges that the bigger problem is learning deficiency.
We have a program that's called Every Child is Able to Read. So that's an after-school program that we are launching with the help of accredited tutors and teachers so that we could sort of focus on the literacy skills of our children.
The government hopes that resuming face-to-face classes will improve the quality of education to better equip these children in an increasingly competitive world. Barnaby Lowe, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Or is decriminalizing gay sex repealing a colonial-era law? The city-state is known for its conservative values, but there have been growing calls for the legislation to be abolished. The change does not affect Singapore's legal definition of marriage between a man and a woman. Hundreds of women have also been posting videos of themselves partying in support of Finland's Prime Minister. Females from Finland and Denmark shared clips of themselves dancing with their friends, along with the hashtag Solidarity with Sanna. Now, the Finnish leader, Sanna Marin, has been criticised over leaked videos that show her having fun with friends. Marin has taken a drug test to disprove allegations that she took banned substances. You're watching Al Jazeera with me, Sahil Rahman. A reminder of our top stories. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is facing terrorism charges days after criticising the police and judiciary. Supporters have gathered outside his home in Islamabad. Now, the court has granted Khan protective bail. Kamal Haider is in the capital with more on the charges.
Now, he's called a huddle of all his party leaders who have been arriving from across the country, supporters as well, given the fact that despite it being a working day, many people have turned up, but now he has been able to get a pre-arrest bail from the Islamabad High Court after his lawyers appealed for that, and he of course will have to appear before the anti-terrorist court on the 25th. So it will be important to see whether he will be arrested then or not.
Russia has accused Ukrainian secret services of carrying out the suspected car bombing that killed the daughter of a pro-Kremlin commentator. Russia's intelligence agency says the person responsible for Daria Dugina's death is a Ukrainian woman. Ukraine has previously denied any involvement. Kenyan presidential candidate Raila Odinga is challenging the results of this month's election at the Supreme Court. The former Prime Minister was narrowly beaten by William Ruto. Palestinians have been unable to fly out of Israel's Ramon airport for the first time, but the Palestinian Authority says it wasn't consulted. It opposes the flights, saying the state needs its own airport. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza have to apply to Israel for permits if they want to travel internationally. Emergency crews in Iraq have recovered 2 more bodies from the rubble of a collapsed shrine. A landslide caused part of the shrine near Karbala to cave in on Saturday. At least 7 people have been killed. A new case of Ebola virus has been confirmed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. A 46-year-old woman died in the city of Beni from a virus linked to a previous outbreak in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. That outbreak was the largest in the country's history. That killed more than 2,000 people from 2018 to 2020. Those were the headlines. The news continues in half an hour with Nick Clark on the News Hour. Next, it's Talk to Al Jazeera. Please stay with us.